All right, thanks again for staying with us on the program this morning on ITV. Yesterday was the International Sickle Cell Day, a day set aside globally to look at the challenges people who have this challenge are facing and what can be done to salvage the situation. We have a renowned professor of hematology who has been at the forefront of helping victims of that condition, pioneering research and surgeries to see how people with sickle cell anemia can be given a new means of livelihood, let's put it that way, through surgery. So we'll be talking along those lines as we analyze World Sickle Cell Day in retrospect. I'd like to thank very especially the Chief Medical Director of Ignatian University Teaching Hospital, Okada, Professor Musa Bazwai. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you, Sonny Duke. Always a pleasure.
Okay, and then we also have with us a member of the Nigerian Medical Students Association talking about Hidero Gloria. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you very much, Sam.
Okay. Prof, we've been on, it's been a long way coming. I mean, we've been on a long journey having these conversations over the years about sickle cell and all of that. Where are we today as it relates to this disease in terms of creating that opportunity, that means of survival for victims?
Well, Sonny Duke, it's sad to say that we still have not made much progress as a nation. I would say that the countries that are actually sponsoring and getting involved in the research and cure for sickle cell is the United States. And despite the fact that Nigerians, we have the highest number of sickle cell in the world.
The highest number
of sickle cell patients in the world.
Wow.
3% of Nigerians. So if we are, say 200 million, or we say above 200 million, so we're talking about 3% of Nigerians have sickle cell disease. And 25% of Nigerians are carriers of the disease. So it's, it's enormous.
It's huge.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And despite all this, we do not have a legislation, for example, to helping these problems. We do not also have policies in place to ensure that we do not give birth to sickle cell disease children on a yearly basis. Nigeria still has over 150,000 beds yearly of sickle cell disease patients. That means every year, over 150,000 children
are giving birth to that have sickle cell disease
in this country. Despite the fact that some churches and in terms of preventing AS couples from getting married to AS couples, you know, despite that, we still have huge number of children coming up with sickle cell. So I would say that we've really not done a lot. We need to be proactive as a country, being the leading country with the highest number of sickle cell patients in the world. And this we are not getting from both government and all the policymakers.
Quite unfortunate. Let's get your take on the part of the Nigerian Medical Students Association. What effort are we making to change the mindset and change the disposition? Because you grow, and as you're growing, in the process of the growth, you get matured, and then you get married. And then, you know, young people will tell you, well, I love him. I mean, I watched a video recently. It was a film, actually. It was heart-wrenching. Even when it was clear that this marriage would be a problem in future because of what will happen to the offsprings, the couple, I mean, the guy and the lady said, look, they are in love. Well, eventually, nobody could do anything. They allowed them to get married. And then the child was given birth to. One day, it was like all was well, all was normal. The child came back from school. On the verge of getting into the house, he collapsed. And then his crisis started. Yeah. And then the nightmares of the parents, that's when it started.
Yeah.
And then it was a case of, you know, all of those things. When they started talking, their parents were reminding them that this was what we warned you against. So what is the level of conscientization in that direction?
Okay, and on behalf of the Nigerian Medical Students Association, a lot of efforts are being made, like the way we are having a campaign here in Benin, there are other states where this same campaign that we are having at Sickle market is going to happen. We are going out into the streets, we are going out into the marketplaces, going out to where to meet people that might not have heard about this disease before. And even those that have heard about it, we are going to meet them right in their own houses to tell them about the dangers of sickle cell disease. It's not enough to just hear about sickle cell. When they are hearing it from someone that has seen patients that have this sickle cell disease, because it's not something that can be managed. It can be managed, but it's not something that you should look forward to, especially as a young couple or you are getting married. Okay. So we are going to meet these people in their houses and tell them about sickle cell disease and tell them about the dangers. And even if, before you even get into a relationship at all, the first question, before you even go on a date at all, the first question should be, what is your genotype?
Fantastic.
Yes, what is your genotype is the first question, because we are all young people, and once you start catching feelings or getting in love, it might be hard to pull off something like that. So before you get into any relationship at all, make sure you know your genotype. If you are among the strains of AS or SS, you are already a carrier of the disease. So you should be looking at somebody that is AA. But if you are someone that has the genotype of AA, then you can be looking at, okay, you can marry anybody that you choose to marry. But if you know that you are an AS, so that's why it's important that you even check your genotype in the first place. Yeah. So everybody out there, Nigerian medical students are trying to tell everybody that you should go out and get your genotype tested.
Fantastic. What is the focus of this year's celebration, Prof? And then what level of progress has been made medically? I know you've pioneered a whole lot of research and surgery in this regards. Yes, can you share with us?
Yeah, well, the theme for this year's World Sickle Cell Day is the importance of self-care. We're talking about, we try not to call them sickle cell disease patients because it's more of stigmatization. So sometimes we use the word warriors. You know, there are people who are struggling, you know, fighting the battles of life. So we can say that the warriors, there is the need for them to understand the importance of self-care.
Okay.
Now, self-care for sickle cell disease patients is a lot. Number one is that we notice that it is stress that triggers off what we call crisis. So if a sickle cell disease patient is able to understand this from the beginning, then the patient can live a better life. Let's take, for example, the weather is very cold now because of the rains.
Yeah.
So we expect even when others are opening their clothes and playing around without shirts, it's dangerous for a sickle cell disease patient.
Okay.
Also, too, when the weather is very hot, we also expect that you should try and make sure that you don't get dehydrated. Drink a lot of water. So self-care is very important. And then when you discover that there's a limit at which you can function, you know, we always tell sickle cell disease patients, because they all have what we call their stable PCV. Stable PCV means that their blood level, some have very low blood level, and that's the level at which they operate. So you
can't increase it?
You can't increase it. Even if you give them blood, the body will destroy the blood and remain at that level.
Wow.
So for females, for example, we're talking of an average PCV of 35%. A sickle cell female patient can have a PCV of 20.
Wow.
And that means that really he or she cannot function the way others do.
So others can have up to 100%?
Yes, I mean, yes.
Close to 100%?
Yes. So
normal?
Yes.
Okay.
No. Normal PCV is a fraction of 100.
Okay.
So for females, about 35%.
Okay.
For males, about 40% average.
Okay.
So, but you see that these patients operate at 20, 21, 19. So with that kind of PCV, you don't expect to function maximally.
Yeah.
So you must know your limits. Because when everybody is running a marathon, you choose to show that you are a hero. And then you want to run, when the others are running even a mile, you want to run 2 miles. So there's this tendency for them to want to show that they are actually not underprivileged or they are not sick.
But they are warriors, aren't they?
Yes, they are warriors. So we expect that the theme for this year is for them to play safe.
Okay.
Take care of yourself. Drink a lot of water. Avoid stress, both emotional, physical. But you know that this country, that's why when you see a sickle cell, a warrior in Nigeria, for example, and a warrior in developed country, the difference is clear.
What's the difference?
The warriors in developed countries are looking far, far better. Some of them, you cannot even see what we call the sickle cell stick, the features. So the difference is because of, you know, even an ordinary individual here like you and I, Sonny, in Nigeria who is AA or AS, we still have a lot of stress in terms of everything that has to do with this country. And so it's
We're
worse.
talking about someone who has a sickle cell challenge.
That is it.
Yeah.
So it's worse for them.
Yeah.
So generally, but I think they should try as much as possible to take care of themselves. And then you ask about the research and what we have been doing. Yes, I always tell people that even if we are doing stem cell transplants, we've done a total of 19, for example, in Edo State, for the which 80% of them have been cured. We cannot transplant over 150,000 children that are born every year, or we cannot transplant 3% of 200 million. So we still advocate on prevention.
Because it's always better than cure, isn't it? Yeah.
And that's why we keep saying that government needs to take proactive action. I'll tell you one of the proactive action. For example, we did a study in the university and discovered that 60%, up to 40 to 60% of students do not know their genotype, even in the higher institutions. And as at that time, they're already falling in love. So we're talking about people having their genotype done as early as possible. Most likely, if government enacts a law and says that nobody goes into the secondary school, for example, the colleges, without knowing their genotype, then that's a proactive action.
Okay.
And then two, we also discovered that there's a lot of wrong results.
Fake results.
Fake results. About 30% of my transplant patients, they got into the problem because they got a wrong results. So they have, somebody looks at your face in some labs. If you are not, if you are ugly, he gives you SS. If you are not too ugly, he gives you AA. And some of the materials used for the routine diagnosis for sickle cell, they are fake and wrong. So something that has to do with life-threatening. I think government should ensure that proper and appropriate, correct genotype is done for people who are living with, Nigerians generally.
Because it's more prevalent here.
That is it, Nigerians.
Okay, let me quickly get a final word from you on the theme for this year, focusing more on care. Yeah, you want to say something in that regard with us?
Okay, yes. Sickle cell patients, they are more likely to fall sick than those that are not in the other blood, in the other genotypes like AA and AS. So the first thing that they should think about is that, especially during the cold weather, get a sweater. It doesn't have to be so expensive. You can get something that you know, okay, once the weather changes, I'm putting on my sweater. And also keeping hydrated, like Prof said, keeping hydrated and making sure that you are not at the extreme of anything. Like when there's in a hot weather, you know that you are supposed to stay hydrated. When there's cold, just take and eat healthy too. So that's my final word to everybody with sickle cell.
All right, Prof, we don't have so much time. Just quickly share with us your final words, particularly on prevention, because we established in the course of this conversation, prevention is always better than cure.
So, as I also said earlier, despite the fact that we can do stem cell transplant in Nigeria with IUTH in collaboration with Celtech, that's the center that does stem cell transplants in sub-Saharan Africa, the whole of sub-Saharan Africa. But despite that, we want to appeal and advocate the fact that prevention is better than cure, and government and everybody must take, proactive steps. And the proactive steps, I would try to list them out, is number one, government must ensure that correct genotype screening is done for all students going into secondary school. It must be done properly. And once it is done properly, the next thing is I will also advise our females, especially. I always try to spend more time on females. Because when the chips are down,
they feel it more.
They feel it more.
Yeah.
I see 99% of the mothers of my patients in the hospital. I see only about 1% of their fathers.
Of their fathers.
I don't see the mothers. I don't see the fathers.
So they feel the brunt
so
when the crisis comes.
A father can abandon the child. I say, to hell with you, I'm not going there. But the mother never abandons the child.
Never.
So the concentration should be on the females. And the females are usually the one in Africa. I mean, not other where in some places females marry men, but here. So the female would definitely be approached. And our advice is that once a female is educated, knows her genotype, it becomes a weapon, just like PVC. Okay. And then once they ask you, hello, what's your name? The first thing you should respond,
what's your genotype?
What's your genotype? So a lot of efforts needs to be done there to ensure that.
Prof, if we have more time, probably I would love to talk more. But I'm sure that in the days to come, we can have more of this conversation just to help you make sense of what needs to be done. You need to take action, because it's really not about you at this point in time. In most cases, it's about the offspring that will come from you. When the crisis starts, it's never a palatable experience. Well, that's much we have for this segment. We'll take a short break. We'll have our next panelist on set to look at the just concluded Ikiti state governorship election. Prof, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you very much
for coming.
Thank you, sir.
We'll be back with you in a moment. Stay with us.